Oseo, Oseo. It's a beautiful day in Indian country. It's a wonderful time to be alive. Welcome to Urban Indian Country News, where we, the people, are the news now for the week of November 24th, 2024. Got my beloved co-host, Dr. Nolan, and beloved Ishmael Bey. How is everybody doing this fine Sunday?
Oseo, cousin Phoenix Moon, how you doing? So good to see you. Good to see you also, Dr. Nolan. How's everybody doing out there today?
Oh,
Good to
we
see you.
are doing well. Happy to be here. What's up, Doc?
Kamawingapo OCO. Good to be here amongst some great scholars and great day in Indian country. Happy American Indian History Month.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's a beautiful day today. So we want to run through our recap of what things that are important to the misclassified American Indian who knows who he is in Indian country. So quite a few topics we want to get into. What do y'all think we're going to deal with first?
I don't really care, cousin. We can roll a dice, we can pull a number out the hat. It really don't matter. It's such a vast topic of the misclassification that took place, and there's just so many examples that we can draw from. But I'm down with whatever y'all down for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Doc, what about you? Did you have a preference?
No preference at all. I think we had some correspondence earlier this week about Senator Daines, I believe, and the Redskins.
Yes, indeed. Why don't you start with that?
Sure. So, give me just a moment. This is from Senator Steve Daines' office. Senator Daines is the senator for Montana. And it says in the email, the iconic, he says Native American, but the iconic Native American logo that the Washington NFL team proudly wore for nearly 50 years was inspired by Blackie Wetzel in 1971 and modeled after the historic Blackfeet tribal leaders and most prominently Chief Two Guns White Calf. 3 years ago this week, Don Wetzel came into my office to share with me that his father's legacy and history behind the famous Washington Redskin logo, he had a vision to use the proud symbol to benefit his people. After years of fighting to honor that vision, the team and the NFL have had productive conversations with Ryan Wetzel, Don's son, and agreed to continue to work together moving forward.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, I was
So,
trying to.
so the Redskins want their color back.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
It says, with these agreements, I voted to support the revitalization for the D.C. Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium, with the condition that the Washington Commanders follow through on the commitments made to the family regarding the Wetzel family. I also urge the team to continue their dialogue to reach a conclusion that honors their past, honors Don Wetzel's vision to use the logo to help Indian country, and honors the will of the Blackfeet tribe to restore the logo to a place of prominence. Montana proud, Senator Steve Daines. And at the end of the email, it says there's a vote or a question that says, should the NFL continue to work with the Wetzel family to honor the will of the Blackfeet tribe? It said, and the options are yes, no, and unsure. So I wanted to share that just because, well, I'm not necessarily a Redskins fan. I know about the Shanahan dynasty and what have you. And at the same time, like, this logo, especially during my time in Potomac territory, Powhatan territory down there, Anacostia territory, this was a real source of pride for a lot of Washingtonians. And I saw how they kind of rallied around this Washington Redskins logo. And now that it's been replaced in a sense, you know, from what looks like in hindsight, you know, a kind of communist, socialist underwriting or rewriting of history, yeah, I would totally support them working with the Wetzel family and restoring the logo to some type of prominence that, you know, the Washington area fans would kind of want to historicalize that. Y'all can go ahead.
Great. It's happy to have them back, but I just can't help but wonder who was it exactly that wanted it removed. I'm so confused here. The natives wanted it removed, but the Blackfeet wanted it to stay. But okay, let's go. I think it's really interesting. But anywho, in other news, what do we have? We got a little piece of legislation that was put out. Senate Bill 3241, which would establish an act for the Grand Village of Natchez Indians and Jefferson College to essentially have access and autonomy over what happens to this particular end of the West Florida Natchez historical trail. I don't know if you all are familiar with it, but you should familiarize yourself with it, especially if you have any Muskogee ancestry or, you know, Alabama, Florida, West Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi ancestry. It would behoove you to check these things out. Give me a second while I pull that up.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting drop right there. Definitely want to explore that a little bit for sure.
I'd also like to see, you know, who are the community players, right, and the constituents that Senator Hyde Smith is actually working with on the ground. That'd be interesting to know who those casting characters are, right? Just, you know, for future dialogue.
Absolutely. I'm sure you, but you know, I want to follow up on it because I'm just trying to figure out who are these Grand Natchez, who's this village of the Grand Village of Natchez Indians. Of Mississippi, no doubt, where I don't know if anybody knows, or well, if the audience is familiar, Mississippi doesn't have any state recognized American Indians or Native Americans, right? They don't have any. They don't have a BIA. They don't have any agency that's over Indian affairs, but yet they have people there that is saying they are the Natchez, that are saying they are the Choctaw. And I don't know. They've never said that they were related to any of us, which, you know how that goes. But what is the criteria? So they have one band of federally recognized Indians, again, which is the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, but they have this Grand Natchez Village of Indians that aren't a village of Indians at all. And if they are, please drop some information so that we can follow up on it, because it's really hard to follow, considering. So here we go. S3241, Grand Village of the Natchez Indians and Jefferson College Affiliated Areas Establishment Act. And we're going to go to the text really quick. To establish the Grand Village of Natchez Indians and Jefferson College as affiliated areas of the Natchez Historical Park and for other purposes. And the irony, we can't help but notice that this came out the next day after Chief Warhorse made her announcement. And you got to watch the plays here. You got to watch how funky they do it when they do what they do. In the Senate of the United States, November 7th, 2023, Ms. Hyde Smith introduced the following bill, which was read twice and referred to the Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. To establish the Grand Village of Natchez Indians and Jefferson College as affiliated areas of the Natchez Historical Park and for other purposes. We don't know what those other purposes are. And if you do, let us know. We'd love to hear from it, have a conversation about it. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Section 1, short title, this act may be cited as the Grand Village of Natchez Indians and Jefferson College Affiliated Areas Establishment Act. In this act, affiliated area, the term affiliated area means an affiliated area of the park established by Section 3A1. Management entity. The term management entity means the management entity for the affiliated areas designated by Section 3D. Park. The term park means the Natchez National Historic Park. Secretary. The term secretary means the Secretary of the Interior, with a crooked ass. Section 3, establishment of affiliated areas. In general, on a determination by the Secretary, the crooked ass, that the sites described in paragraph 2 meet the criteria for designation as an affiliated area. The sites are established as affiliated areas to the park to preserve, protect, and interpret for the benefit of present and future generations resources associated with the sites. Description of sites. The sites referred to in paragraph 1 are the Grand Village of the Natchez Indians, which is National Historic Landmark and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and Jefferson College, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. B, the map. In general, as soon as practicable, after the date of establishment of the affiliated areas, the Secretary shall prepare a map depicting the boundaries of the affiliate areas. 2, availability. The map prepared under paragraph 1 shall be on file and available for public inspection in the appropriate offices of the National Park Service. Administration. The affiliated areas shall be managed in accordance with this act and any lawfully generated applicable to the units of the National Park System. Management entity. The Mississippi Department of Archives and History shall be the management entity for the affiliated areas. Cooperative agreements. The Secretary may provide technical assistance to and enter into cooperative agreements with the management entity for the purpose of providing financial assistance for the marking, interpretation, and preservation of the affiliated areas. Limited role of the Secretary. Nothing in this act authorizes the Secretary to acquire property at the affiliated areas or to assume financial responsibility for the operation, maintenance, or management of the affiliated areas. Management plan. In general, the Secretary in consultation with management entity shall develop a general management plan for the affiliated areas in accordance with Section 100502 of Title 54 of the United States Code. Submission. No later than 3 years after the date of establishment of affiliated areas, the Secretary shall submit the management plan developed under paragraph 1 to A, the Committee on Energy and Natural Resources of the Senate, and B, the Committee on Natural Resources of the House of Representatives. Okay, so that's really, really interesting. And again, Mississippi has no state recognized tribes, but somehow they have a grand village of Natchez Indians with no Natchez Indians in it. Ain't that funny? Don't you find that suspicious?
I do think that is suspicious. What Cousin Phoenix Moon is exposing right now is that they are creating a body politic or a tribe out of thin air. They're using the term, actually attributing it to Indians, and there ain't a damn Indian that they're even attributing it to. So how are you now creating a body politic? Because they're going to fill in the blanks later on. They're just laying the infrastructure right now. How can you sit here and say that you're making these political moves as Indians and there is no single Indian, when you have case law that deals specifically with Natchez Indians? There's literally a lineage that has case law involved with a Natchez Indian. Why aren't you using them as the Natchez Indians that you're talking about, is the question. And we have examples.
And, I've been looking to see if there's been any grievances again, but there's no imaginary people. And of course, after this broadcast is over, they'll probably have some things that we're expressing to probably fill in their blanks. But, they weren't there, and they, again, creating a body so that at some point they can insert said Native Americans where the Natchez Indians should be. I definitely know that they haven't followed up, or there have been no complaints historically by them regarding their exile and transportation out of the Americas for the period of almost 80, 90 years in droves. There's been no grievances documented by these so-called Natchez Mississippi Indians in the state of Mississippi, where Mississippi does not recognize or acknowledge Indians, although they have a federal band of Mississippi Band of Choctaw, which is a whole nother ball game in itself. How did they get their recognition when the state of Mississippi has no way of recognizing or acknowledging Indians? And that's for the ones that don't have a state recognition, as well as the ones that have federal recognition, when Mississippi doesn't have any Indians. Okay. I'm going to just put something on your mind.
One thing that I wanted to hone in on is that section G with the management plan, where it says, in general, the secretary in consultation with the management entity. Who decides who the management entity is going to be? Who is the management entity? Who allocates them money? Does this come from Congress or Senate, or does that come from the state? Just a lot of questions I have. And it says, in consultation with the management entity, shall develop a general management plan for the affected areas in accordance with section 100-502 of Title 54 United States Code. So I went to section 100-502 of Title 54 United States Code, and it brought up a lot of questions. I'll just read the first portion. It says, general management plans for the preservation and use of each system unit, including areas within the national capital area, shall be prepared and revised in a timely manner by the director on January 1st. So they on a time crunch, I see. On January 1st of each year, the secretary shall submit to Congress a list indicating the current status of completion or revision of general management plans for each system unit. General management plans for each system unit shall include 1, measures for the preservation of the area's resources. Oh, the area's resources, eh? Like if it could have any lithium or, any gold. Okay.
Yeah.
Indications of the types and general intensities of development, including visitor circulation, transportation patterns, systems, and modes associated with public enjoyment and use of the area, including general locations, timing of implementation, and anticipated costs. 3. Identification and implementation commitments for visitor carrying capacities for all areas of the system unit. And 4. Indications of potential modifications of the external boundaries of the system unit and the reason for the modifications. This is what this sounds like to me. 1, this sounds like a GMO version of what Queen Chief Warhorse is doing on the state level, right? 2, this seems like a last-ditch play by the federal, right, to get this in through Congress, through the legislative branch, because they have to present this general management plan as we see. We just read section 100-502, right, of the U.S. Code 54, said they gotta have this to Congress by New Year's Day. Thanksgiving this week. That means they got 5 weeks really to get this done, and not really that. So this is why they're pushing this through full steam ahead.
When do they go on holiday break?
That's a good question, Brother Ish, because they still have to pass that fiscal cliff spending bill, that NDAA bill, and that's usually later December.
Yeah, they usually try to slide in a lot of things when people go out on holiday breaks. That's when they slide through a lot of these different bills.
Absolutely. That's when they omnibus a lot of stuff. And if you don't have your eyes peeled on like exactly what's going on the House floor, you'll be, drinking eggnog and like, wow, we sent $84 billion to X country? Yeah.
Yeah, that's how Obama slid in the Negro thing too. He knew that they wanted to go on holiday break, and as opposed to them, delaying anything, they were pushing through a lot of things.
Absolutely. And, that's also the time where, they push through a lot of continuing resolutions because they always talk about government shutdowns. I bet my bottom dollar in mid-December we'll start hearing conversations about continuing resolutions and government shutdowns and how they gotta band together and reach across the aisle to keep the government running and all that mumbo jumbo. But you're spot on. And I just wanted to point this specific USC code 54. I wanted to point that out just to show the comparisons that are being done on the federal level now that specific Indians and specific chiefs like Queen Chief Warhorse are establishing relationships, right? And establishing genealogical ties to the land, right? Where we're seeing with the Natchez, that really is not accessible. We aren't able to find anything, in terms of either on the federal level or on the state level that would substantiate their claim. And as we said, if anyone in the audience or anyone that's listening or watching has that information, please present it to us.
And yeah, my question would be, who is the chief of these Natchez? Clearly, in the conversation of what Dr. Nolan just stated, he identified Chief Warhorse and then a tribe, and then what that tribe is actually doing in conjunction with the government. You've identified who the quote unquote leadership is, who the tribe is, and how they move as a body politic. Here with these Natchez, you have nobody. It's like, who the hell owns Bitcoin? You don't know, right? So you've got this fictional character who's running a fictional tribe who's making body politics where it can funnel into millions and millions of dollars and land. So how are you? We want to know who is the chief of this tribe. Because clearly, if it's just a park, it's some white people who have nothing to do with Indians that are using the title of Indians and making moves on behalf of Indians. But what we want to prove to you is that the real Natchez Indians have been misclassified, misidentified. That's what the history shows. And I like to point out an example of that. May I share my screen soon?
Absolutely.
Okay, so just one moment, cousin.
And while Brother Ish is pulling that up, in that last point of USC 5400, 502, it talks about within the management plan, them being able to expand boundaries. Now, that tells me, looking at it from a political scientist perspective, now you're setting up a fracas or a legal battle between federal and state. Because who's to say that they don't expand this fictional tribe until proven otherwise? Who's to say this fictional tribe doesn't expand their boundaries if this goes through into West Florida territory? You see where I'm going with this, y'all? Or in the other territories?
Absolutely. All in the interruption of what the real Indian got going on.
Precisely. Internal tornadoes going on. You can go ahead, Brother Ish.
Yes, absolutely. No, you're spot on, Doctor. Thank you so much. I agree. Marguerite Scypion. Marguerite Scypion, also known in court files as Marguerite, was an African Natchez woman. Let's be advised about the term African being applied here. That is an absolute misnomer. They have absolutely no proof that her father was African whatsoever, but I will continue. Born into slavery in St. Louis, then located in French Upper Louisiana. She was held first by Joseph Tyon and later by Jean-Pierre Chateau, one of the most powerful men in the city. In 1805, 2 years after St. Louis came under the U.S. rule, Marguerite filed the first freedom suit in the city circuit's court 41 years before Dred Scott and his wife Harriet. Their more well-known case. In November 1836, Marguerite, her children, her sister, and other descendants of Marie-Jeanne Scypion, her mother, finally won their case as free people of color. Notice how they made these Natchez Indians into what title was that? Free people of color. That is misclassification because she proved that she was a Natchez Indian. She did not apply as a free person of color to win her case. They misclassified her. But let's continue. The unanimous jury decision. Yeah, unanimous jury decision in their favor was based on their maternal descent from a Natchez woman, as Indian slavery had been ended by the Spanish in 1769. The trial venue was moved to Jefferson County because the Chateau family was influential in St. Louis. The decision withstood appeals to the state and the United States Supreme Court in 1838. The case was considered to end Indian slavery in Missouri. Again, 41 years before Dred Scott. Throughout their struggle, Marguerite and her two sisters argued that their mother, Marie-Jeanne Scypion, had been illegally enslaved. After the 1769 because after the Spanish started ruling the area, the colonial government abolished Indian slavery in the Louisiana Territory to make regional policy consistent with other Spanish colonies. Since her mother was Natchez, again, this was all before Mississippi existed, so this was all the same area, okay? Marie Jean Scypion was legally free. Thus, her descendants born after that date were also free. And as they were born to a free mother, although an 1806 Louisiana Territorial Supreme Court ruling decided against the Scypion descendants, they did not give up their desire for freedom. So they lost that first case, they kept on pushing. Following the passage of a new law in 1824 protecting enslaved people's right to sue against illegal enslavement, the women and children renewed their petitions. Notice the power of petitions. In 1826, Marguerite Scypion, her children, and two sisters filed separate suits against their masters. One of the Scypion sisters and some of their descendants died before the case were decided. The court combined the suits under the name Marguerite, Free Woman of Color, for their final trial. She and the other descendants of Marie Jean Scypion finally achieved their freedom in 1836. And y'all can read into all of the details of the actual early life and the history. It's actually very eye-opening. But what it's proving is that there is descendants right now of the Natchez Indians. Who are these people that are making these moves now in 2024 when you have descendants of people that have already proven that they're the Natchez Indians that have been misidentified and misclassified? That's the power of what we're doing, and that's the power of what we're addressing within our petition. And I do yield the floor.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. And in other Natchez news, Doc, don't you got something on our buddy Miguel Jackson?
I do. Give me just a moment to pull that up.
Marguerite Scypion, say her name.
And let's also keep in mind that with those features of what she would have by them using these titles as Black and Natchez, she clearly don't look like who these people that be running around saying that they Indian chiefs. She don't look nothing like them. But yet she proved her case in law 3 times with 3 separate cases.
That's right. I would love to have a conversation with any of the knowledgeable family members descending from that family. I would love to.
I think we need to do a drop. I think we need to open up and do some ancestry and open up some records and start tracking down some of them family members. I think that'd be very interesting. I think since we do have a whole genealogical team in Urban Indian Heritage Society, make sure y'all feel free to like the page and share the page. But I think we need to open that up, and find out who these descendants are. Maybe capture them a little bit, because if you're not connected to them, how are you claiming that you're Natchez Indian? They proven who they are.
That's right. And and then there's this sentiment behind the atrocities surrounding the Natchez Indians, them being removed along with the Yazoo, right? And that should also be a good indication that people can kind of relate the Natchez and the Yazoo as a type of Chata or Muskogee, right? A part of the Muskogee group for sure. Which stretches all the way into Canada, from the Gulf of Mexico all the way into Canada. Hell, excuse me, from South America all the way into Canada. I think that's
right.
more accurate.
That's more accurate. That's correct. Mm-hmm. And notice how they stripped the Indian identity from these people whose whole case law was rooted in them being Indian. Notice how they stripped their identity with the stroke of a pen.
that, but we got to keep our eyes out. People in Mississippi, please be diligent and be on the lookout for some pale folks jumping up saying that they these Natchez Indians that descend from slaves, people erroneously enslaved and being called something other than what they were in order to perpetuate the slavery that they were not supposed to be in the first place. And we know that there were some other folks there in Mississippi, the state that they're calling Mississippi right now. People that look like us, the landowners, the treaty signatories, and they're not federally recognized. They're not state recognized. They're not nationally acknowledged as such. But the minute that some white folks jump into position to play said Black Indians, they happily do so with no pushback, no clapback, and definitely no demand that they prove they are who they say they are. That's got to stop. Look a ship alone. Now they wouldn't know an Indian if we bit them on the nostrils.
Yeah, that park got to change its name. Something. You can't be going around like you can't be a park calling yourself an Indian and then making moves and that's
the grand village of Natchez Indians, where there are no Natchez Indians, and they have not done anything to vindicate the Natchez Indians that was removed from the United States, right? Because when we talk about slavery and the slave trade, more American Indians left out of the United States as slaves than any amount of any slaves in all 350 years came into what we call the United States.
Especially with the case law of the Natchez Indians being misclassified into free people of color.
That's right. And they would also be absorbed into one or the other, because the Natchez at that time, especially as the Chicago and the Allegheny and the Wabash Confederacy was assisting the French in the removal of the Yazoo and the Natchez Indians, you still haven't heard anything about the Devil's Punch Bowl. Nobody's crying or complaining about their people that they said bury them where they dropped. What white folks gonna come out and say that they lost somebody in the Devil's Punch Bowl? That was an atrocity established by the Union Army, not the Confederates. The Union Army killed those people by the thousands, hundreds of thousands. So I want to see the details of those atrocities, and I'd like to see them match up some of the historical truths with whatever lie they're getting ready to tell the federal government to get some money out of them when it don't belong to them, as they perpetuate the misclassification of the real folks that it does and would belong to. Doc, I got your source. Hold on one second. There you go.
Appreciate that, Mon. I just wanted to bring this up just because a lot of the times we see in these tribes and everything that pop up is not so much a necessarily need to honor the ancestors or to honor the land, but more so to get a casino. And I don't know why that seems to be a consistent theme, but I wanted to show this just because in the past, you and Brother Ish have unveiled, as well as our colleagues in UIHS have unveiled and have shown homage for Michael Jackson and his Choctaw lineage, right? His Choctaw lineage. And here we have Joe Jackson. This is a piece from The Guardian in June or July of 2010, around the time that Michael Jackson passed. This first paragraph says Michael Jackson's father is moving ahead with plans to build a museum and possibly a casino in the late singer's hometown of Gary, Indiana. Joe Jackson and Mayor Rudy Clay announced yesterday that they were launching a feasibility study into a massive Jackson complex, including a museum, concert hall, performing arts center, pavilion, and possibly a hotel, restaurant, and gambling parlor. I just want to stop there because I wondered, one, if Joe Jackson kind of used this, his son's death, as a launch pad to get him into these political atmospheres and everything, right? I don't know, I can't speak to his character or the sound of his mind, but that is one thing that I would question just based on past patterns of what folks in his circle and out of his circle have said about him. The second thing that I wonder is, because that this is on, Gary, Indiana is on the water. It is on a Great Lake. So I wonder what types of water access or port access that also would entitle them to, right? And that also connects to our next topic. Since we're pivoting towards the Great Lakes, I also wanted to talk about HR 176.
Yes, sir.
I did want to point out also, Doc.
Oh, yeah, you go ahead.
My wife was just in Chicago for 2 weeks, and on the weekends she would drive around. On her days off, she'd drive around. And last week she was in Gary, Indiana, and she went to Jackson Street. She went to the Jackson home, and she was sending me pictures and stuff. And as she was driving back, she said, "Hey," she said, "they got a casino right here in Gary, Indiana." I said, "Huh?"
Wow.
She said, "Yeah, they got a casino right here." And she said, "It's a Hard Rock." And she's like, "Hold on a minute, I'm gonna call bro." And bro is one of our friends that's a tribal member. He's a tribal member of the Seminole tribe. And he was like, "Yeah, my son helped open up that property there." So it is Seminole owned from Florida in Gary, Indiana. And the casino's new, because he said his son had just left that property as it had opened up. So sure enough, in Gary, Indiana, there's a brand new Hard Rock casino, just as you had just read from back in those days right there. Sure enough.
And that's just interesting to me, Brother Ish, because listen, at the end of if you and your family try and get money, listen, I can't get mad at that. I want everybody to succeed. That's the beauty of America, right? And at the same time, living in a city where the median income is under 40,000 that has a casino, my question is always going to be, okay, what's the community benefits package that's been presented to the mayor, to council, to community stakeholders? Have you even had any listening sessions? Like, what, you're coming into a specific area, but what are you doing to not necessarily revitalize the area, but get community buy-in and honor the land that you're on? I just think that's very lacking, not just in Gary, but in a lot of places. I yell my mic.
I agree. And it's interesting also, when I traveled to Chicago, the last time, probably about 2, maybe 3 years ago, Michael Jackson's house, we drove over to Gary, Indiana. They got the cheapest cigarettes over there. And we drive over into Gary, and Michael Jackson's house was only $36,000. So nobody wanted the house where all of that American magic happened, all that creative energy that was put out and contributed by that entire family.
I'm just saying they would never treat Gracie Land like that.
Oh, absolutely not.
But that's how y'all treat Gary. Like, I just, wow. Like, rather get a casino built than buy like the family house where that magic was made. That just, I just don't understand some people's rationale when they do things like that.
Quite interesting. But we got a.
Yes, ma'am. Could you pull up HR?
Yeah, I got you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You go.
Okay. HR 176. Of course, this is the end
10176.
HR. Oh, yeah. 10176. Thank you so much. To authorize the Bay Mills Indian community of the state of Michigan to convey land and interest. Peep that part, y'all. In the land owned by the tribe. In the House of Representatives, November 20th, 2024. So this was last week. Mr. Bergman, that is the House Rep for Michigan, introduced the following bill, which was referred to the Committee on Natural Resources, a bill to authorize the Bay Mills Indian community of the state of Michigan to convey land and interests in land owned by the tribe, being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. I'm so sorry, Moon, I can't see. I think it says land and interests of the Bay Mill Indian community of Michigan. In general, subject to subsections B and C, notwithstanding any other provision of law, including regulations, the Bay Mill Indian community of Michigan, including any agent or instrumentality of the tribe, peep that part too, y'all, including any agent or instrumentality of the tribe, referred to in this section as the quote-unquote tribe, may transfer, lease, encumber, or otherwise convey without further authorization or approval or any part of the tribe's interest in any real property that is not held in trust by the United States for the benefit of the tribe. We're going to stop right here because I'm about to rock y'all socks. About to rock y'all socks. Because as soon as I saw that, I know a famous Indian who is a part of the Bay Mills Indian community. And the first thing I thought was, wow, isn't this a conflict of interest? Could you pull that up for me, Moon? And then we're going to come back to that part where it says transferring the land or any in part.
Here go the sucker.
Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, Brian Nolan. Brian Nolan is a citizen of the Bay Mills Indian community, Ojibwe, where he recently completed his tenure as tribal president. Prior to that, Brian served as chief judge of the Bay Mills Tribal Court. From 2009 to 2012, he served as a counselor and policy advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Interior, Indian Affairs. He is a graduate of Michigan State University and Michigan State University College of Law. Brian enjoys hiking and kayaking on the shores of Lake Superior and is a nature photography enthusiast. But it also says, as we read, Brian is also the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, and that he's also a part of the Bay Mills Indian community. But could we go back to HR 10176 real quick, Moon? Now that we've identified the chief, the main character, let's go back to that part in parentheses where it says, including any agent or instrumentality of the tribe. Is that referring to Mr. Nolan?
Okay.
May transfer, lease, encumber, or otherwise convey without further authorization or approval. Oh, so they going full speed ahead this June? Right before the 118th end? Oh, everybody must think Joe Biden asleep. House just running, y'all just tearing grandma's house up. All or any part of the tribe's interest, there go that word again, in any real property that is not held in trust by the United States for the benefit of the tribe. But wait a minute, isn't the Department of Interior also over Bureau of Land Management?
Absolutely.
Don't you see how they setting this joint up?
Yeah, he made himself a de facto dictator.
While simultaneously also probably crafting law in Bay Mills Indian community, right, in their legal code to correspond with this whole land grab. It's a federal land grab, y'all, and a fire sale all in one.
And they doing it right up under our nose, playing in our face. Them people in Michigan still ain't got good water to drink. But these are shenanigans these folks is playing. Conflict of interest. If y'all want to do something about it, definitely hit us up at Urban Indian Heritage Society. We have a template letter that we can sign. You can put your name in and send it to the Senate. We'll send it to Congress, right? And it's important, especially if you're a registered voter, because that's where it counts. Doesn't matter what party you are, but if you are against this buffoonery that's going to happen, we have a template that we can send, and we will do a mass campaign to make sure that they got something on their mind before this Congress goes out. Right? And if y'all got anything, drop it in the chat. Leave it where we can see it. Any of your issues that you want to take against this action right here before it happens. That's what we have to do. Be ahead of some of these curves, right? So that we don't have to try and figure out a panacea after the poop done hit the oscillating revolver. You get it? And then we have these members of Congress, and shout out to Orange Man, Uncle Donald, who wants to get rid of these people that sit here term after term after term, been here 50 years, 60 years, creating this same mess that we're trying to get out of. The people responsible that lay this quicksand down. Yeah, these folks is raggedy, but that is a direct conflict of interest. Brian Nolan is underneath Deb Haaland, who's the Secretary of Interior under this administration. And they trying to line their shit up for when they're no longer in power to still be in power. All while misclassifying the real Indians, and we got all these other folks pretending to be us.
Precisely, and boxing folks out just off the basis that they're not a part of their membership club. When they can't even, a lot of them can't even, what was the question that you posed about a week ago, Phoenix, regarding a great reset? back to the 1970s and everything?
Oh, yes.
If folks would be able to prove genealogical ties?
If they all had to prove that they was Indian prior to federal recognition, would they be able to pull up some receipts of what they folks was doing prior? What would they be able to prove? Because as it stands, the misclassified American Indian Negro, we have a lot of receipts. A lot of receipts showing the activity here in the United States before the United States was formed and after, throughout slavery, during and after. However, the victor has yet to show why they should control the spoils. And they look victorious only because they're in every single position of power to maintain this goddamn lie. And this is where it comes to an end. This is where we have the understanding of how to be ahead of some of these things so we can stop them in their tracks. This right here need to be stopped in its tracks. It should be dead prima facie, in its face, on its face.
And Brother Ish, Phoenix, I just wanted this to be put out there because we know that a large array of folks in Indian country look at our conversations and our news and our bills, especially those in the imperial capital in DC. And I want them to know, if you're watching, we are putting you on notice. And if you think that you will get out scot-free before this 118th Congress section is over without the people knowing just exactly the slimy and grimy stuff y'all been doing down in Anacostia territory, you've got another thing coming.
Absolutely right.
I yelled, Phoenix. Brother Ish, y'all can pick it up if y'all want.
Let's move forward to the last topic, to the next topic. Not the last, but definitely the next. California and Louisiana voted to keep slavery in their constitution. On November 5th, Californians rejected a ballot measure banning forced prison labor, voting instead to keep the practice legal in state prisons. Proposition 6, which moved to eliminate the constitutional provision allowing involuntary servitude for incarcerated persons, is projected to fail. The Associated Press reported, with 72% of the vote counted, 54% of California voters said no to the ballot measure. The Golden State's Constitution has what some describe as a slavery loophole. While slavery is illegal in the state, California's 199,000 prisoners can be required to work jobs that earn them less than $1 an hour. Prisoners who decline these jobs can face severe consequences, such as delays in their parole eligibility, Politico reported. One of the critical jobs that prisoners can be required to work is fighting wildfires. While salaried firefighters in California receive $74,000 on average plus benefits, prisoners receive $2 a day and an extra $1 an hour when fighting active fires. The Anti-Recidivism Coalition, a grassroots organization working to end mass incarceration in California, led the push to remove the slavery loophole from the state's constitution. Esteban Nunez, ARC's chief strategy consultant and lobbyist, spoke with Newsweek about the result, saying voters might not have understood the magnitude of the proposition because of its language. One of the most significant changes was the ballot title and summary itself, which used the term involuntary servitude without referencing slavery. Despite our advocacy for including slavery in the ballot language to capture the full moral weight of the issue, the official language used only involuntary servitude. This choice likely diluted the urgency of the measure for voters who may not fully understand the historical context and human rights implications of forced labor in prisons, he continued. Nunes added that ARC was working to convince people that even with a carceral system, forced labor is inhumane, counterproductive, and fundamentally wrong. He said the focus here needs to be on the benefits of rehabilitation over forced labor. Studies and real-life examples show that when incarcerated individuals have the opportunity to pursue education, therapy, and voluntary work, they are far more likely to re-enter society as law-abiding, contributing citizens. Forced labor, however, disrupts these opportunities, perpetuating cycles of harm, poverty, and recidivism. Nevadans. Shout out to Nevada. Nevadans also had the chance to vote on anti-slavery ballot measure on Tuesday, and unlike their neighbors to the west, voters in the Silver State chose to abolish slavery in their prison system. Nevada's Question 4, which moved to repeal the state's provision allowing slavery and involuntary servitude as punishment for crime, passed with 61% of the vote, the AP reported. Alabama and Tennessee, who also removed provisions for forced labor from their state constitutions. Proposition 6 was not the only prison-related measure on California's ballot. Californians also voted on Proposition 36, which moved to increase penalties for repeated theft offenses and certain drug crimes, including some involving fentanyl, and create a drug court treatment program for people with multiple drug possession convictions. A Newsweek previously reported the tough on crime measure received support from Californians who wanted a stronger response from their government on street drug use and what they saw as growing homelessness problem, as Proposition 36 would enable law enforcement to act more decisively against repeat offenders and drug-related offenses. Anne Marie Schubert, a co-chair of the coalition supporting the measure, said, "This is a resounding message that Californians are ready to have safer communities." I don't know how you figure that, but okay, let them be great. Let them be great. So I don't know how close they think they are to reparations if they don't even want to remove slavery. And again, be mindful of the language that you may or may not understand, right? There's a legal definition for even basic words that we use all the time and don't know if they can bring harm to you in a legal situation. The word family includes a house full of servants, right? Father, look at the legal definition of father. A father is the full guardian of a child and does not need any interference from any entity to make him take care or pay for the care of a child. Go look at the law. But they got our brothers all tangled up in child support, and some of these hussies got these brothers on child support with kids that ain't even his. When the law states that a father is the full legal guardian of a child. Go check it out. Go check it out. Don't believe me. Go see what a parent is. And go see what a child is, because a child or an infant by law can be somebody that's 87 years old and they can still be an infant by law. Henceforth, the majority. People that may not understand what it is that they're voting for, or even what it is that they're reading on a ballot, and because it's that involuntary servitude, it didn't click to anybody. Especially even the people that are in California fighting for reparations as slaves. And that comes from the ignorance of not knowing that an indentured servitude and slavery were the exact same goddamn thing. Both inhumane, both illegal, right? Legal at a time, but unlawful now. I'm a yield.
Very good point on that, cousin. Thank you for that drop. Appreciate it. very valid.
California should be ashamed of themselves. Gavin Newsom, he thinking about running for 2028. This would be a good time to snatch him by the short and curlies, if you know what I'm saying. You feel like you're powerless, but really you're very powerful, and you need to fight them back in the area in which they understand. That's their pockets, and that's the law. That's their pockets, and that's the law.
I'd like to zoom in on California, specifically the link that I just dropped, which is called Brown v. Plata 2011. This was a case that was taken to Supreme Court, and SCOTUS ruled, I'm reading this from the Daily Beast, SCOTUS ruled that California's prisons were so overcrowded that they violated the Constitution's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. I'd also like to familiarize y'all with who Attorney General was at that time in California. It was Kamala D. Harris. And when I first read this, I'm like, oh, okay, well, wait a minute. Maybe because I know she was also elected in 2011. So I'm like, well, maybe she just didn't have enough time to kind of, no, she came into office in January of 2011, and this ruling was in November of 2011. So well past 100 days and everything, when a lot of legislators, put forward their priorities and they triage, their A, B, and C list concerns. And it just seems as though that, reducing prisons or reducing the amount of folks who were in prisons for non-violent crime. We're not talking about, just free for all, who let the dogs out, y'all. But we are talking about, not having folks locked up for a nick bag, right? And it just seems as though, from reading this legal brief, understanding SCOTUS's ruling, why they ruled the way that they did in terms of the cruel and unusual punishment statute, and the given length of time between now Vice President Harris's rise to tenure as Attorney General versus the 11 months that went past before this briefing was issued, is just very telling to me, and I yield.
I wonder if the D stand for devil. Mama said that lady is the devil. Kamala Devil Harris. Goddamn. Speaking of Kamala Harris, Candace Owens, the Candy Girl, they finally sent some birth certificates of Donald Harris to Candace Owens. So crazy. Then you have the first-hand accounts from the people that actually knew this mysterious Beryl, and the picture that she's hugged up with is not Beryl at all. Very interesting. But yeah, this is the shambles between California. Who's there? You got Nancy, you got Maxine Waters, Gavin Nuisance. Somebody, the real Gaddy said Gavin Nuisance. That's exactly perfect name for him. Yeah, you had Kamala, and then y'all watching LaFonza Butler. What's her name? LaFonza Butler. She's the other senator there in California, and she's also, I think, maybe a protege or a sorority sister or something like that, in cahoots with Kamala Harris. She was trying to get her attention during the campaign, but Kamala was way too busy blowing a lot of squilla on celebrities that probably didn't even vote for her anyway. And they in a lot of hot water, so it's all up from here. But I hope y'all saving those links. Urban Indian Country News, where we the people are the news now. And these are some of the things that we know is important to the misclassified Indian and people that, love America and see what's going on, not afraid to call it out. If we don't talk about it, who really gonna do it? Right? Who really gonna do it?
I like to share some information that's dealing with some of the further misclassifications that are taking place. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's pull up some of the historical references, some of the modern time and some of the historical time. But let's pull them both up. Let's see what it is. So here. First example I like to pull up is the Chavez Ravine that we talked about last episode of the news. We're talking about the Dodger Stadium that had taken place and the eminent domain that was wielded as a weapon. So let's deal with that part of the example first to lay the foundation. Let's see what it says.
But before that, 3 vibrant neighborhoods stood on that land.
Well, now a bill in the state assembly would address the injustices faced by people who were kicked out of their homes. KCAL News reporter Jeff Nguyen has the story of the push for reparations.
I think we all like to get into some good trouble.
Activists and state leaders are looking to draw attention to the stories of people like 81-year-old Carol Hawkes.
It was really very traumatic and very difficult for me.
She was born in what is now known as Chavez Ravine, home to Dodger Stadium. When she was 8, her family lost their homes to eminent domain.
Many of us were homeowners. I want to say we were not a slum.
Which is why Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo and Insurance Commissioner Ricara Lara introduced a bill this week to look at reparation for families who lost their homes through eminent domain or eviction in the 1950s.
By creating a public and searchable database detailing events surrounding the land acquisition, this will foster transparency and education about this pivotal moment.
What's your stance on reparations?
Well, 100%. I believe it's appropriate.
David Hernandez is the Republican Party Regional Vice Chair of LA County.
I think there needs to be some insurances within the process that it stays focused on those who benefited financially, not the taxpayers of Los Angeles.
The attorney behind the reparation effort says the return of Bruce's Beach to a Black family has set precedent. Activists are now looking at models across the country to figure out what reparation will look like and who qualifies.
We are going to take time to create a task force that does the investigation and the data-driven analysis.
In the meantime, Ms. Hawkes and other impacted families have been documenting their stories through an archive at LMU.
We have to be truthful, we have to educate, and we have to all decide collectively what's okay.
AB 150 still needs to go through committee before lawmakers can vote on it. Advocates would like to put in a monument to educate people about the history of this area. In Elysian Park, Jeff Nguyen, KCAL News.
So that was
More than just beautiful dam.
That was one of them that's dealing with reparations. And as you can see, they are using Bruce Beach as case law, as they accurately said. So they're using the plight of the quote unquote Black family in order to prove their status, right? And if you read that bill, they've actually embedded within that bill the linkage to the indigenous Indian tribe of Los Angeles. There's an indigenous Indian tribe in Los Angeles that owns a lot of valuable real estate in Los Angeles, actually. And they've linked them into the bill to align with them to make sure that they're on a part of the committee that is going to demand the reparations. Very powerful moves being made. But if you notice, those people that were claiming that they wanted reparations never linked up with any of them, right? Let's keep that in mind. Now, second example, descendants rethink ethnic identity after historians uncover indigenous slave names. Imagine all your life you've been running around saying that you Sanchez and you Paco and you Hernandez, and then come to find out your ancestor was indigenous and was enslaved. People have to rethink and reconfigure their entire history of where they fit into this world. Let's see what this one says.
Homebuyer Education with Colorado Housing and Finance Authority helps you prepare for home ownership, and in-person classes are free. Get the knowledge you need to help with the home buying process and make your experience a success. Learn more at chfainfo.com/yourhome.
Anna, hey, Anna, hey, Anna, hey, oh.
On the outskirts of Alamosa, Colorado, weeds grow among humble tombstones.
Jose Antonio Gomez.
And his wife is Abrana.
Here, Juliana Aragon Fatula shares a recently revealed family secret. Her great-grandfather, as a boy, was purchased.
My grandmother didn't tell me any of this. My mother didn't tell me any of this.
This 1865 list of Indian captives proves it. Jose Antonio Gomez, age 4, Navajo, a list of dozens in Conejos County.
But finding out that my great-grandfather was a slave, I mean, the word purchased is like cattle or something. And that he was not the only one.
The man behind the list, Lafayette Head, a U.S. Indian agent. Head was an ambassador among Native Americans. He would also become Colorado's first lieutenant governor despite owning and selling child slaves like Jose Gomez.
I don't know how he was treated, if he was treated as a family member or if he was treated as a slave.
Juliana is among a growing group of people experiencing a profound shift in personal identity with the unexpected truth. People who now know they descend from Native Americans held as slaves.
My dad said we were Mexicans, Mexican Americans. My aunt said, oh no, we're Hispanic, we're Spanish.
You know, we're telling these stories because I think it not only troubles our sense of identity, but it also reveals the resilience and the complexity of how we think about identity.
Thanks to a $1.5 million grant, Dr. Esteban Rael Galvez built a team of historians. They are uncovering thousands of stories of indigenous slaves whose names were intentionally forgotten over generations.
There's been stigma in terms of what it means to be a descendant of an enslaved person. That's certainly true.
The project is called Native Bound Unbound. A searchable public catalog is the goal.
I mean, this village of San Luis had hundreds.
In San Luis, the historic home owned by town founder Dario Gallegos still stands. He also owned indigenous slaves. A history not celebrated in this corner of what used to be the New Mexico territory. Slavery was so prevalent in the region, researchers estimate indigenous servants made up to 1/3 of the population in the late 18th century.
There's not a single Nuevo Mexicano, and by that I mean of this entire region in Colorado as well, who cannot trace their ancestry back to at least one individual who was enslaved and indigenous.
The team searches for key words, slavery euphemisms in baptismal and census records. Words like sirviente, genízaro, and criada, which means someone reared as a maid or servant.
She was just taken from somewhere and sold and spent her whole life in the San Luis Valley.
Weston Archuleta's great-great-great-grandmother, Soledad, was listed as criada when baptized at age 6.
To find out that way and to find out I had such a personal connection, it was very shocking, especially being told you're Spanish your whole life. You know, you're Spanish. Having that drilled into you and then having that just obliterated it's almost freeing, though.
There's also stigma in being indigenous, right? In that era. And we are now seeing people who are reclaiming that.
A dark history buried within dirt and documents, name by name of the long dead, but who give meaning to life today.
I can imagine that he'd been colonized into speaking Spanish and Christianized and baptized and had lost his native ways.
They were separated, they were captured, they were placed in a subservient role within communities. And I actually want people to recognize the beauty and the complexity from where they come from, because it's actually a powerful story.
Anna, hey, Anna, hey, Anna, hey, oh. I'm singing it to Mother Earth. I'm just praising the fact that I survived because my ancestors survived. If they hadn't survived, I wouldn't be here. Anna, hey, Anna, hey, Anna, hey, oh.
If you have any ancestry connected to New Mexico and southern Colorado, there's a chance you may have this history in your family. We put a list of keywords online that you can use to research your own family tree on sites like Family Search and Ancestry. Native Bound Unbound expects to launch a full website sometime in 2024. Yeah.
It's interesting to see this kind of history.
So that's another example, again, of people who were misclassified, right? Not even knowing what was going on for their entire lives. And then with records that were unveiled, and they use the term intentionally forgotten, is what it said in there. Intentionally forgotten. If somebody intentionally forgets to put your history down, that means that they're obscuring it. That means that you're entitled to compensation because you have been living a lie. They forgot their language. They forgot their culture. This is what they were just telling you. So when we go through these same exact things, some of those other indigenous or quote unquote Native American people are quick to say, well, what's your language? Well, first of all, the language that you're speaking is some pieced together gibberish. Number two, look at the story of what took place with the indigenous populations. They forgot their language no different than what we did. And as we're obtaining our connection back, there are many people on the same path. So we should feel a connection and a kinship to them because they're on the same path. That's what we address within the petition. And lastly, one example I like to read into this week's record is Morrison versus White. Morrison versus White was a freedom suit first filed in Louisiana's 3rd District, October of 1857. 15-year-old Jane, or Alexina Morrison, a runaway slave, against her purchaser, New Orleans slave trader James White. Morrison, who had a fair complexion, blue eyes, and flaxen hair, claimed to be white. This white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes was enslaved, and she said, hell no, I ain't no slave. I was free and y'all kidnapped me. Let's see what the case proved. In 1857, Morrison was sold to J.G. Halliburton, or J.A. Halliburton of Arkansas, to longtime New Orleans slave trader James White. She soon ran away, and in October of that year, petitioned the 3rd District Court in Jefferson Parish, where White resided, to be declared legally free. She claimed she was born to white parents and that her first name was Alexina, not Jane. Further, she asked for $10,000 in damages. She went straight carrying on the motherfuckers, right? She also asked to be placed under the protection of William Dennison, the parish jailer, and that she be kept in jail to avoid being seized by White. She remained in jail for all but 19 months over the next 5 years, giving birth to a girl while incarcerated. Huh? Who the daddy? Anyways, the case went to trial 3 times. White provided depositions asserting that Moses Morrison of Matagorda County, Texas, had purchased her siblings, and their mother in 1848 for 4 or 5 years before giving her to his nephew in Arkansas. The nephew then allegedly gave her to a slave trader in New Orleans. The defense also produced a bill of sale, which did not constitute legal proof in Louisiana as it was not notarized. The 1850 census listed a 7-year-old female mulatto slave residing in Matagorda County with her family. The plaintiff's lawyer were unable to provide any corroborating evidence of their own, but asserted Morrison was white because she looked and behaved like a white woman. The first trial ended in a mistrial. The jury in the second, held in May 1859 in the 5th District Court, voted unanimously in Morrison's favor. The third trial was held in New Orleans. That jury, unable to reach a unanimous decision, was permitted, with Morrison's consent, to reach a majority verdict, 10-2 for her. In January 1862, White's lawyer appealed again, but a 4th trial never took place as the U.S. Army regained control of New Orleans in the American Civil War, and with the eventual U.S. victory came the end of slavery in the United States. Nothing is known about the latter life of Morrison or her daughter Mary, but they were even kidnapping white people, okay, dealing with misclassification, making her a mulatto in order to enslave her, and her being able to win her court case also. Again, and we're going to give further examples of the misclassifications that take place. And I yield the floor.
Thank you so much for that, cousin.
Fantastic, Brother Ish.
Misclassification is not exclusive to the misclassified American Indian. Misclassification, slavery, being subject to being a freed man or woman, free person of color, it's not exclusive to someone's appearance or what their hair is like. But I definitely want to thank all of you for coming through. We appreciate you. You know, we'll be back next week. We're going to make this a weekly thing where we take some of these topics that we see and we're going to incorporate them into where we are with it. The misclassified American Indian. Y'all want to say anything before we tap out?
We went through a lot of great topics on our personal chat. I want to thank you and Dr. Nolan for that little sneak peek and the drop that y'all did this week. It was beautiful. Thank y'all for that. I'd like to thank Urban Indian Heritage Society for again creating the platform and allowing us to share and disseminate information, as well as the work that we're doing behind the scenes. I'd like to thank all of the supporters for their continued support. Please continue to sign and share the petition. As you can see, it's going to good work. We're bringing and disseminating the information. It is not just limited to just one group of people, right? There were mass misclassifications, and that's what we're addressing. So we're showing and highlighting this information. Thank you so much, Cousin Phoenix Moon, for your example, for your leadership, as well as your sisterhood and your motherhood. We appreciate you. Also, thank for the illustrious Chief Warhorse for the drop this week, as well as her leadership and her counsel. Whenever we need to have a sound ear or a sound mind and spirit, the chief is always there in that capacity. So we continue the support of Chief Warhorse and her family. And I just want to thank all the listeners and the supporters.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Nolan.
I just want to thank you and Brother Ish for, your continued scholarship and willingness to share, not just with me, but we the people. I also would like to take a moment to thank we the people, all our folks, UIHS family, cousins, and kin in the chat. We appreciate you for pulling up, as well as all of our UIHS partners. And of course, we would like to take a moment to thank Queen Chief Warhorse for her direction. And I do want to take a moment to thank our respective families, right? Like the folks we eat breakfast with that we text every day, because it's a portion of them, right? It's them that allows us to show up and to share a lot of this scholarship with each other and everything. And ultimately, what we do is for them. What we do is for grandmama and grandpa. So shout out to them as well. And happy American Indian Heritage Month.
Yes, indeed. Happy American Indian Heritage Month. I definitely want to thank you all. Strong family. Indigenous royalty I'm on stage with right now, and I appreciate you gentlemen so much. The beautiful men of Indian country, ladies and gentlemen, they're around, they are present. I see some of you all in the chat. Charge it to my heart, to my mind and not my heart, because I ain't gonna sit here and run through all your names, but Jamar, Copper Colored Brown, Lloyd Cardi, all y'all beautiful ones. Listen, we appreciate you. My good sister Gator, always picking up that phone. We be on the phone 4-5 in the morning, laughing, giggling, sharing goddamn memes and whatnot. You know, we appreciate all of your work. And, you know, we're going to keep it coming. We're going to keep it coming. January, y'all know we're going to be in Slidell. It's going to be beautiful. I can't wait. I'm so looking forward to this all. Definitely want to thank Chief Warhorse and Miss Noreen and all of those Arthur and all of the beautiful people, Miss Liz Teague, and the wonderful politicians, the truthful politicians that I actually met. Yeah, for keeping their word and doing what's right. I appreciate them all. Until we meet again, hit us up on X if y'all want that template. Drop it underneath the video in the comments or whatever that you want the template, so we could do something about let's see, Brian Nolan and those Natchez Indians. So we got two people that we're gonna have to press and see where they coming from. So if y'all want the template, definitely let us know and we'll make sure that you guys get it. And if not now, then when? And if not us, then who? Y'all take care of yourselves, take care of each other.